Hello and welcome to what I hope will be a learning experience for everyone. This is securing an SSH setup. We're going to be using a brand new install of Ubuntu 2004 on DigitalOcean. Not necessarily advocating them or not, but they are quick and easy to use for me. So without any ado, we will first start out with creating a new user. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect up via terminal to my brand new instance on DigitalOcean. So I spun up a box just for this. Um, I'm not advocating you have to use DigitalOcean. You can use AWS or whoever. You can use a Proxmox setup. You can use a VM. It doesn't really matter. The purpose of the video is not really to tell you which virtualization technology to use or cloud technology to use, but how to secure your SSH. So that all being said, this is a brand new install, so we'll SSH as root at, and then this is the box that I have. I feel sorry for anyone else whose IP address this is, because I'm going to destroy this VM, and I'm sure that it'll be assigned to someone else. But anyway, the important thing here is that we're connected up. So first thing you should do, okay, is you should always make a user, right? So we're going to make a user in this case just so that we can connect up, right? We will say sudo, well, we don't need sudo, we are root, but user, I'm sorry, add user. It's much easier to use add user because it will create the skeleton directory, it will create the home directory, it will ask for a password, it's very automated. You can use user add manually and add those, but those are more for system accounts. But anyway, we're going to add a user. In this case, we're going to use me. My new password will be extremely secure, I promise. It's not ASDF. And we will say that's all good. So now we've created a user. Yay! However, we need to, this user is a power user, right? It's me. So we're going to user mod -a for add to the group, sudo, and we're adding myself to the sudo group. So now if I do groups, ptarent, I should see that I'm in the sudo group, which I am, which is awesome. I'm in the sudo roots group, so we can go ahead and we can exit out of this. Okay, now we're going to SSH back in as ourself. Okay. Oh, it doesn't work because this is already set up relatively secure. What we're going to do first is we're going to nano etc SSHd. Okay, there is an SSH config, but that's for the client, not for the daemon or the server. So we'll go here and look, it says include all those configs. Permit root login is set to yes, right? So this is how most cloud places have. Password authentication is no, permit empty passwords no. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify this file a little bit. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to change the port to something different. So I see a lot of people here make the common mistake of just say, oh, use 2222. The problem with that is that it's a relatively known port now. The trick has been out for a while. So the reason that we're changing the port, by the way, is this does not make your installation really any more secure. It does tick the margin up a little bit as far as, you know, the port is different. So port 22 gets scanned all the time on the internet. Every second of every minute, port 22 is being scanned. So this just simply separates some of the noise, right? So it hides your bots and stuff, and now this port will still get pinged because people do scan the internet just for every port. But the chances of it being a full-on real attack are pretty slim, unless, of course, you know somebody is targeting you. And if that's the case, some random port at least makes it to where they have to know how to change ports, which most script kiddies, even nowadays, kind of know how to do that. But anyway, so there's that. Okay. Most of the time, these come with some good things. So we're going to say permit root login no, right? We're going to change something temporarily, but then we'll change it back. So here we'll say yes. Okay. And this means that we can use passwords to authenticate. We're not going to allow root to authenticate with it, though. And we're going to use the port of 6665. Okay. I'm going to make a note of that, 6665. Okay, so we're going to save this. Okay. And then we're going to say system control restart SSHd. Now, I'm still connected on the port that we originally used, which was port 22. Okay, so you'll see here. Let me install netstat real quick. Oops. So now that netstat's installed, let's go ahead and make sure that SSH is doing what we hope. So so what we're doing here is we're saying netstat, show me all connections. There's reasons behind all these, but I'm not going to go into them. So netstat-tuple, which is actually 5 different arguments altogether. So it's TCP connections, UDP connections, all, and listening. It's a bunch. Anyway, we're looking for the port that SSH is on. We're going to type in our password and type in the correct password this time. And now you will see that SSH is listening. Okay, user SSH. You can see I'm connected to it, and you can also see that this is the IP6 local loopback. So we're going to ignore that one. But basically, you can see that I'm connected. You can also see that it is listening on that port, so others can connect as well. So what we've done here is when you install netstat, it kind of refreshes the network stack. So I have to reconnect. So we're going to connect up. This time we're going to use port that we specify, which is 6665. My user, not root, okay, because we've already disabled root. And we're going to now say my password, and now we're connected up. So let's SSHd config again. So again, we have our port, right? We have permit root login no, and we have empty password no. So, or yes, in this case. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that I don't need to enter in my password to connect up to this thing. And we're going to, so everyone should have an SSH or a .ssh directory, right? And in there's a couple files. There's your known host. There's your ID RSA, ID RSA.pub, which is your public key, right? Your public key is shared all over the place. You can copy that anywhere you want. It's your private key you want to hide. The private key is the ID RSA. The public key is .pub. So to make these, you would use, oops. Oh, I swear I can type. So you can do SSH keygen, and that will create the SSH keys for you. Once you've done that, you can copy your ID, right, over to this guy here. So we will copy over to there. Okay, but we got to tell it what port. We got to tell it what user. Okay. So now it's going to ask for our password. And now we should be able to connect up without using a password. Oops, sorry, I'm an idiot. SSH. There we go. So now we are connected up. Notice I did not need a password. So this means that I have disabled, well, I've configured it so I don't need my password. Now how does this work? This works by this authorized keys here. So if we cat the authorized keys, we'll see my public key from my Arch machine to this host. Now notice that this right here, by the way, is a comment. A lot of people think it's like important, like, oh, don't change that. It's actually just a comment. It's just there to let you know what user on what machine. It's just a default comment. This could be anything. This could be, my dev box, or, Philip is amazing. Any of those things. Last one being very cool. So anyway, so now we're going to, that's how it works. So if someone were to give you a SSH key and say, hey, let me log into the server, you just simply paste that directly into authorized keys, all as one line, okay? No line breaks except at the end, and it should be fine. It is very early in the morning for me, so I'm yawning. Anyway, so that is how we lock that down. Now, the next piece, right? We're going to want to go back into this SSH file here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to password authentication equals no. What that's going to do is it's going to force people to have that authorized keys file. Okay, if they're not in the authorized keys, then SSH is not going to allow them to connect in. And I'll show you what that looks like. So first off, let's restart the SSHd service. Let's exit out. And we're going to connect up, but this time we're going to connect up as root. Okay, and it's going to instantly say permission denied, public key. So it lets you know that we don't have a public key in root that corresponds to the public key that or the private key that I'm sending. And if I were to do myself, it would be fine. And the reason that it says, root didn't work, well, a couple reasons. One, I misspelled root, right? But also, so that user doesn't exist, which is awesome. Also, root doesn't have that that file that we talked about earlier. Right. Oh, look, my IP address is right there. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Anyway, so, ugh. Anywho, so what this means is that we're, root with the extra T doesn't exist, but we don't know that coming in from it. We just see public key was denied. One, there's no user there. Two, the authorized keys file doesn't exist, or at least the key that is being sent across during the connection attempt does not correspond to a entry in that file for that user. Okay, so that's kind of just how the back end mechanics of how it works. So that's step one. Okay, that's step one to securing SSH. The next thing that we should probably do is we need to go ahead and create a firewall setup. Okay, so let's do this. Let's see if it's installed first, right? Dpackage search for UFW. So it is ready to go. So UFW status. Oh, wait, sudo bang bang. And of course I need to set up. So the status is inactive. The program is installed, which is probably, I think it's installed by default on pretty much everything nowadays. Unless you're using a Red Hat type environment like CentOS, Fedora, or Red Hat itself. That would be different. But if you're in the the Debian crew, it's probably going to have UFW installed, like Debian and Ubuntu, any of the Ubuntus, Pop OS, all the variants. So, anywho, so what we're going to do is we're going to say um, sudo UFW allow 6665 TCP, okay? Because SSH uses TCP, not UDP. So we're going to say allow, and now we're going to say sudo UFW enable. And notice it says it may disrupt SSH connections. This is why you should add the rule first, then turn on your firewall. If you do it the other way around, you're going to cut your own throat and you're not going to be able to connect up. So anyway, so now we can say sudo UFW status, and I like to say numbered because it's easier when you're deleting rules and whatnot and looking at rules. So we have this rule here, but this says that anyone can connect up. Now, if you have a dynamic IP address, one that changes with your ISP, like mine does, you're going to want to leave this. However, there are some other things you can do. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to make this a very, very protected setup. So what I might do is I might have another machine that I connect to, and then that host is allowed to connect to this host. It's what's called a jump host, jump box, bastion box. There's a couple of different versions of them. But basically what that does is that it means that you must connect up to bastion box, and then that box can connect to this box. So that's much more secure. I mean, you could just contact your ISP and see if you can get a static IP address. Because if you can, then you can say, I only want to allow from a specific IP address. And there are some really great rules that you can do from this. One of the things that I see people they think UFW is a baby tool, but in reality, UFW is simply IP tables. There's no difference. It's just that UFW makes it easy to use your IP tables. It creates the rules for you and stuff. And honestly, I've forgotten most of my IP table stuff now because I use UFW for pretty much everything. If you wanted to specify, if you did have a static IP, right, sudo UFW allow from, right? And I don't remember what my IP address is. Hold on a second. Curl ICANN has IP.com. Okay, so there's my IP address. So you would say allow from 70.69. I'm saying the wrong numbers. So what this is saying, hey, allow anyone from this IP subnet. Now a /24 is a pretty big subnet. That means everyone can connect up on that group. If you wanted to make it a little more explicit, you could just say that. But if you wanted to allow an entire subnet, you could. And that, you could do this and sudo UFW status numbered. And you'll find there that, we allow, notice it doesn't have the /TCP because I was lazy. So that means UDP and TCP are allowed. And you're allowing in from that IP address. Okay, then you could say sudo UFW delete 1, right? Because this is rule number 1. You could delete it. It's going to say yes. Do you want to? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to delete 2. And then you say yes. So now if you do status numbered again, you're back to this. Now, why do you have that, v6? So that's referring to IP version 6. So UFW has a setting here under default UFW, And IP version 6, you can say no. All right, and then when you say, hey, go there, boom, done. Easy. Easy peasy. The IP6 rule is still there, so you don't see it, because I haven't restarted the service or anything. So that's how you use the uncomplicated firewall, which is what UFW stands for, to configure for SSH on a specified port. You can limit it to a specific IP. You can limit it to, the world. But that's most of what you need, right? But there's also this other thing called failtoban, and we'll cover that in the next section. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to install and configure failtoban, which is a remarkable tool, very nice to lock down your server even more. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to sudo apt install failtoban. I do -y because I'm lazy, and it doesn't like it. Why doesn't it like it? Sudo apt update, perhaps, maybe, maybe not. Yes, I'm sure I can upgrade. Ah, see, there we go. It's just needed to update. So failtoban is a wonderful tool that will automatically ban IP addresses when they do horrible things. So first off, let us go into the config file area of failtoban, and you're going to find there's a few things. Well, you're going to find there's a few things in here. There's the jail config, there's the failtoban config, right? What we're going to do first is we're going to copy etc failtoban jail.config to failtoban jail.local. It hates me. Let me make this a touch bigger. Whoop. I will hope that my software did that correctly. We shall see. Let me preview and see if that works. No, it's still being a butt. So let me take this back to what it was. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so clear. Now we're going to nano etc failtoban jail.local. Now I know I could just type in jail.local, but I like to use full paths. And with tab completion, it's not that complicated, so give me a break. Anyway, so this is how you activate your jails. The concept of a jail is just what you would think. When people do bad things, they get thrown into a jail. So what we're going to do is we're going to first off make sure that the back end here is... okay, so let's see. It's been a while since I've been in here. So these are some cool settings, right? So we've got the ignore command. We're going to leave that alone. The ban time is 10 minutes, okay? And what we'll do first is we will look for backend, okay? This specifies the backend that you're using. In this case, we're going to be using systemd because that's what we do. Auto is totally fine. It, for the most part, does work. But let's use systemd just so that we 100% guarantee that it is systemd. And guess what? I forgot to say sudo again. I swear I know how to do things. So Control W is how you search inside Nano. Those of you who use VIM, Vi, whatever, I'm using Nano because it's easier for everyone. I don't want to have to explain the key combos. If you use Emacs, you're already using a completely different operating system at this point anyway, because Emacs is an OS. It's so, anywho, so there's this wonderful thing called an ignore IP. Okay, set this right? So just undo that, and then set it to your IP address if it's static. If it's not static, you can't use this. But this way that you won't accidentally lock yourself out, right? Um, so anyway, and the ban time is 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you will be able to get back in anyway. So you could change this. You could change this to 600 seconds if you wanted, okay, because it defaults to seconds. And the find time should be the same as your ban time. So let's say 600 seconds, which, that's 10 minutes. It's really not any different. Let's try like 300 seconds. Ooh, that's a terrible thing. So that's 5 minutes, okay, and that's probably fine. You don't want to set it ridiculously long to a year or something, because what if you mess up and your config's not exactly the way you think, or your IP does change? Then you lock yourself out for years. Not a good idea. Just set it to something reasonable. 5 to 10 minutes is fine. You want to set it to an hour, do what you want, but I don't think it's needed. Anyway, so max number of tries before a host can get banned. You can set that to 3. I like 3. 3 is a good number. 5 is, it is what it is. So the number of matches stored in the ticket, right? You can leave those alone because it's going to pull automatically from the max retries up there. And for the most part, you're done. It's really not that complicated to do this. It really isn't. Now you can set up a send mail server so that it'll actually email you when bad things happen. Not a bad idea at all. So ports, we're going to leave that alone because that's every port that's on the internet. So yay, wonderful. It's going to use IP tables to do all this, right? And these are how you can config those separately. You don't really need to mess with any of this. Honestly, all the config for failtoban is done. That easy. Now you can go and specify independent jail just for SSHd. You can totally do that. But this is fine, right? So SSHd is where I was trying to get to. So notice the port here is SSH. It's not going to work for us because we changed our port, remember? So we would need to change a port here. All right. Now, technically, that's all you need. Okay. You've got, your mode here, right? You can be more aggressive. You can change it from normal to DDoS, extra, or aggressive, which does all those other things. Excuse me a second. Had me on. So we've already set the max retry. We've already, you can do filtering and all that stuff. You can change this around more, but for the average person, this is fine. You can leave all these, honestly. Nothing wrong with that. If you have an HTTP server on here, this will actually watch those error logs. And if somebody is crawling your site, it will block them. If you're a bad bot, it will block them. Okay? All these wonderful Apache settings, they're just gorgeous. I love them. So you can see that it's very powerful in what it can do. You can set up all kinds of new things. You can even, if you've got webmail set up, it's got some very nice default settings that are applicable to pretty much everybody, especially if you use webmin, which I personally think you should not use webmin. Maybe on an internal only server, but for external, probably not the best idea. Not that it's got a lot of vulnerabilities. I personally, when I first started Linux, I used webmin because I was like everyone else and I wanted it easy. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But for you to really learn more about Linux, it's better for you not to lean on a crutch and use the terminal. I'm not saying that GUI is terrible. I'm not. GUI is very good. There are many times I need a GUI. Well, I don't need, but I would like a GUI. So anyway, these are all the common settings, and you can keep going on and on and on. So we'll output this file, save it, however you want to put that. You would really, before you start setting things up and trying to attack this, you're going to want to sudo failtoban client set SSHd unban IP and then whatever IP address. That is how you unban somebody, and that's important for you to know because if someone is trying to get in, it's good for you to know how to do that. I personally normally set up a script for this, right? So I'll copy this and I'll make a directory. Well, I'll make a directory called scripts. I'll go into scripts and I will do things like sudo mod 775 scripts sudo ch own nobody no group scripts so that everyone can use that directory. And then I will do things like say nano unban SSHd and then .sh, right? And I will say bin bash, right? And then I will paste that command that we have, and then I'll say 1. So that 1 means the next argument. I'm having a day. So again, we're going to bin bash paste and that %1. And so now I can make it executable. And now what we can do is we can just simply say unban SSH and then 127.0.0.1 and I'm sorry. So there you go. That's simple. 0 means that it wasn't banned in the first place. But this lets you quickly and easily unban based on IP address without having to remember that command. It's a little hacky, but it works. And there, we have finished setting up SSH to be very secure, very hardened. And the way I like to remember why this is important, as I may have already said, is that I view SSH essentially like giving someone a mouse and a keyboard to your server. Because basically that's what it is. They can install a GUI. They can not run GUI over SSH, but they could set up, XRDP, a GUI, and then enable RDP, open it up, and then they could use a GUI. I mean, that is possible. Anyway, I have talked enough. So yes, this is hopefully the first in a long series of videos that I'll be doing on setting up servers, getting things going as part of the Crafty Foundation initiative. That just sounds awesome when you say initiative. But anyway, hope you've learned something. If you have any comments or anything, keep them to yourself. I normally keep comments off. If it's nice, you can put it in the bottom. Oh, wait, I've got to do the whole click subscribe thing, right? Yeah, click subscribe or don't. Just check on it manually. That's kind of what I do. I don't really like the subscription thing. But anyway, like the video. I guess that would help. Share it amongst your friends. Hopefully it's been helpful for you. And I ramble, so I'm going to shut up. Have a good day.